by the door. He fell in love with an Indian maid over in the antique store. 'Cause Elijah just stood there and never let it show, so she could never answer yes or no. He always wore his Sunday feathers and held a tomahawk. The maiden wore her beads and braids and hoped someday he'd talk. Elijah, too stubborn to ever show a sign, because his heart was made of knotty pine. Oh, Elijah, he never got a kiss. Oh, Elijah, he don't know what he missed. Is it any wonder that his face is red?
Patris et Filio et Spiritus Sanctus. In order to make your sins against the Indians known to you, I have come up on this pulpit. I who am the voice of Christ crying in the wilderness of this island, therefore it behooves you to listen, not with careless attention, but with all your heart and senses so that you may hear it. For this is going to be the harshest and hardest and most awful and most dangerous voice that ever you expected to hear. This voice says that you are in mortal sin, that you live in it and die in it, for the cruelty and tyranny that you use in dealing with these innocent people. Tell me, by what right or justice do you keep them in such a cruel and horrible servitude? By what authority have you waged such a detestable war against these innocent people who dealt on their own land? And why do you keep them so oppressed and weary, not giving them enough to eat or taking care of them in their illness? For with the excessive work that you demand of them, they fall ill and die. Or rather, you kill them with your desire to extract and acquire gold. every day? And what care you take that they should be instructed in religion? Are these not men? Have they not rational souls? Be certain that in such a state as this, you can no more be saved than the Moors or Turks.
Welcome. Tell me what they say. Tell me what they say. Hey, 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 tell me what they say. You read your history books all year long. How do you know it ain't just a dance and a song? Hey, 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 tell me what they say. Hey there, folks. How you doing? Welcome to Tell Me What They Say. I'm your host, Bob Reif. Tell Me What They Say is brought to you by New World Order Encyclopedias, the completely abridged and revised, politically correct encyclopedia. This is how our show works. Every show has a theme. Tonight's theme is the Spanish conquest of the New World. I'll read a quote from a historical figure living at the time. The first contestant to hit the buzzer wins the opportunity to name that historical figure. But there's a hitch. They first must name the category into which that historical figure falls. Those categories are church, state, explorer, Indian, or scholar. Okay, if the contestant correctly identifies the category, they win the chance to name the quoted person. If they pick the right name, they win a $500 U.S. savings bond and a chance to escape into history on a dream vacation. Okay. History buffs, let's meet our contestants. From Columbus, Ohio, we have John Brown. Okay, John.
I teach American history at Columbus High School. Wow.
You must have your hands full with the Columbus Quincentennial celebration coming right up in 1992. Your students must be going gaga. You bet, Bob. Our Italian-American students are really pulling their oars on this one. Our second contestant is Stella Waters. Tell the folks out there about yourself, Stella. I'm a mother of two, Bob, and I'm from downstate Illinois, Urbana to be exact, and I'm an amateur history buff. I first got into it when I started reading my children's history books, and I noticed that it's all written by men, and it's all about men, and women are excluded, and that's just not the way it was or is. Well, that's peachy. You are a woman, after all. Okay, we've met our contestants. Now let's try a dry run. They all go naked as their mothers bore them. They do not bear arms or know them, for I showed them swords, and they took them by the blade and cut themselves through ignorance. Is that a quote from church, state, explorer, Indian, or scholar? Explorer is the correct answer. If you said explorer, you would now have a chance to guess which of these four uttered those sounds. De Soto, Columbus, Marco Polo, or Cortez. Columbus is the correct answer. And those are the very words that Columbus used to describe the Arawak Indians when he discovered them in 1492 in the Caribbean islands. If you said Columbus, you would now have that U.S. savings bond and valuable points towards escape into history on a dream vacation. We're going to pause for the cause right here, folks. Don't go away. Don't go away. We'll be right
Illustrious Prince,
It is right that matters that concern the safety and peace of the great empire placed in your keeping by the divine goodness be reported to you. For you rule Spain and that marvelous new world in the name of the great Charles, your father, and you strive for immortal glory, not just with the imperial power, but especially with the generous spirit and wisdom implanted in you by Christ. Therefore, I thought it advisable to bring to your attention that there has come into my hands a certain brief synopsis in Spanish of a longer work that Sepulveda is reported to have written in Latin. In it, he gives 4 reasons, each of which, in his opinion, proves beyond refutation that the campaign against the Indians is justified, provided it be waged properly and the rules of war be observed, just as up to the present kings of Spain have commanded that they be observed. I hear that it is this man's intention to demonstrate the title by which the kings of Spain possess the empire of the Indies, and to bolster his position with laws and arguments so that no one will be able to slander you from now on, even tacitly at this point. I have read and reread this work carefully. What impression it has made on others, I do not know. I certainly have detected in it poison, disguised with honey, in the first place. While claiming that he wants to vindicate your jurisdiction over the Indies, he tears to pieces and reduces your rights by presenting arguments that are partly foolish, partly false, partly of the kind that have the least force. Furthermore, if this man's judgment in this matter should be printed and sanctioned with the royal license and privilege, the empire of the Indies will be entirely overthrown and destroyed. Indeed, if so many laws already issued, so many decrees, so many harsh threats, so many statutes conscientiously enacted by the Emperor Charles and his predecessors have been ineffective in preventing so many thousands of innocent men from perishing by sword, hunger, all the misfortunes of total war, ineffective in preventing extensive areas of the Indians' highly civilized kingdoms, the most fertile provinces, from being savagely devastated, if the fear of God and the dread of hell have not even moderated the utterly ruthless and cruel spirits of the Spaniards, if the outcries of preachers and holy men that these Spaniards be barred from the sacraments of the church, not be forgiven in sacramental confession, if all of this is of no avail, what will happen when evil men, for whom nothing is wanting but the opportunity, what will happen when evil men read that there is a man, a scholar, a doctor of theology, the imperial historian, publishing books that approve these criminal wars and campaigns? Furthermore, what will happen when they read that he teaches that they may lawfully keep everything that they take in these wars, even though they undertake the campaign with the evil intention of looting, that is, pillaging by fire, sword, murder, plunder, violence, upsetting, overturning, throwing into confusion all laws, divine and human, and that they are not bound to restore such goods, because the Spaniards who do these things and shed the blood of the innocent consecrate their hands to God, as Sepulveda has written. And they merit Christ's grace because they prevent the worship of idols? Whom will they spare? What blood will they not shed? What cruelty will they not commit, these brutal men who are hardened to seeing fields bathed in human blood, who make no distinction of sex or age, who will not spare infants at their mother's breast, pregnant women, or even men of gray and feeble old age, for whom the weight of years usually awakens reverence or mercy? What will they not do when they hear that there is a man teaching that they consecrate their hands to God when they crush the Indians with massacres, pillaging, and tyranny? They will give more trust to Sepulveda as someone who tells them what they want to hear than they would to the Son of God himself when face to face was teaching something different. Therefore, if Sepulveda's opinion that the campaigns against the Indians are lawful is approved, the most holy faith of Christ, to the reproach of the name Christian, will be hateful and detestable to all the peoples of the world, to whom the word will come of the many inhuman crimes that the Spaniards inflict on that unhappy race,
so that neither in our lifetime nor in the future will they want to accept our religion under any condition. For they will see that its first heralds are not pastors, but plunderers, not fathers, but tyrants, and that those who profess it are ungodly, cruel, and without pity in their unmerciful savagery. Furthermore, suppose this book is polished, painstaking, persuasive, carefully built up with many tricky kinds of argument. It will permanently persuade these thieves, these enemies of the human race. They will never come to their senses, nor admit their sins and flee to the mercy of God. He praises with lofty language these plunderers who loot with uttermost savagery, and he commends their warlike virtue. Finally, it is intolerable that a man to whom has been entrusted the writing of the imperial history should publish a destructive error that is in total disagreement with the gospel and the meekness and the kindness with which all Christ's teaching is relevant, and which the church, imitating its master, exercises towards those who do not know Christ. Therefore, consider the many misfortunes, the great harvest of evil so deserving of rebuke, and the severest punishment that will arise from this teaching: offense against God, ill repute and hatred of our most holy religion, irreparable damage, the loss of so many believing souls, and the loss of the right of the kings of Spain to the empire of the New World. Consider also that these opinions of his will spread through all the nations of the world the savage and firmly rooted practice of seizing what belongs to others and increasing one's property by shedding human blood, which supposedly plans are for the power and glory of the state. I cannot contain myself. Mindful that I am a Christian, a religious, a Spaniard, a subject of the King of Spain, I cannot but unsheathe the sword of my pen for the defense of the truth, the honor of God's house, and the spreading of the revered gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. So that according to the measure of grace given to me, I might wipe the stain from the Christian name, remove the stumbling blocks and obstacles hindering the speed of belief in the gospel, and proclaim the truth that I have avowed in baptism, have learned in the religious life, and finally, however unworthy, have professed when consecrated bishop. For by all these titles I am bound to set myself up as a wall against the wicked for the defense of a completely innocent people. I am obliged to block the road along which so many thousands of innocent men have been lured to their eternal destruction, and to defend with my life my sheep, whom I promised by a solemn oath to protect from every wolf, ecclesiastical and lay, who breaks into my sheepfold. Therefore, your most excellent prince, I beg that your highness have this work, which I have written at the cost of much sweat and many sleepless nights, to be weighed and examined by learned men. If anything is found to be wanting or poorly written, I would be most happy to have my sleepless night perfected by their charity. If, however, anything is found to be stated well, I look for no other human reward, but that your highness command Sepulveda to give me a copy of the Latin work he has written on this subject, so that when I have refuted his falsehood more completely, the truth will shine forth and rule the consciences of all men. Farewell.
Welcome back to Tell Me What They Say. Let's get right down to brass tacks, down to the nitty-gritty. The first quote is, it's a short one. What is it for? These short ones can be the hardest sometimes. What is it for? Oh, heavy, they almost buzzed together, but I think John was first. John? Explorer. Oh, sorry, John, no. Stella, you know that explorer is incorrect. Which is it? Church, state, Indian, or scholar? I'll say state. Yes! And which one of the following once asked, what is it for? King Ferdinand, Queen Isabella, Charles V, or Charlemagne? Queen Isabella. Stella, right? Stella! And here is the history lesson. When de Nebria, the Queen's royal scholar, presented Queen Isabella with his Grammatica Española, the first grammar ever written of a modern European language, the Queen said, "What is it for?" And dig this. The Bishop of Avia replied, "Your Majesty, language is the perfect instrument of empire." Can you dig it? Right back there in the 15th century, the power of words. Of course, Stella, we know about that power today, don't we? You just ask any PR flack or newspaper hack. Okay, let's go right to our next quote. I lovingly propelled them towards heaven with blows. John. Church. Yes. Now, which of these four holy rollers spoke that hallowed homily? Pope Pius V, Francis of Assisi, Teresa of Avila, or Bernardino de Sahagui? Bernardino de Sahagui. You are hot today, John. De Sahagui, now considered the father of the study of the Nahuatl Indian language and literature, used those very words, "I lovingly propelled them towards heaven with blows," to describe how he used to beat the faith into the Indians in the middle of the night. Cowabunga! We got a tie game going on here, folks. The excitement builds. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
The campaigns against the Indians are justified, provided that they be waged properly and according to rules, as the kings of Spain have commanded. These people are barbaric, uninstructed in the art of letters and government, completely ignorant and totally incapable of learning anything but the mechanical arts, that they are sunk in vice, are cruel, and are of such character that, as nature teaches, they are to be governed by the will of others. This, at various times, many reliable men who have known them and lived in close association with them have asserted under oath. This is also clear from the 6th chapter of the 3rd book of Oviedo's General History of the Indies, which was examined and approved by the Supreme Council of the Indies. For their own welfare, people of this kind are held by natural law to submit to the control of those who are wiser and superior in virtue and learning, as are the Spanish, especially the nobility, the learned, the clergy, the religious, and finally, all of those who have been properly trained and educated. For in them especially shine forth natural ability, uprightness, training, and the best morals of any nation. Both in Spain and among the Indians, spiritual and temporal government is entrusted to such people rather than to Indians, rather than to soldiers, who for the most part are unprincipled and under the cover of military license inflict many injuries. The conclusion drawn from this is that Indians are obliged by natural law to obey those who are outstanding in virtue and character in the same way that matter yields to form, body to soul, sense to reason, animals to human beings, women to men, children to adults, the worse to the better, the imperfect to the more perfect, and finally the cheaper to the more precious and excellent. To the advantage of both. This is eternal and divine law, according to Augustine. Therefore, if the Indians, once warned, refuse to obey this legitimate sovereignty, they can be forced to do so for their own welfare by recourse to the terrors of war. And this war will be just by both civil and natural law, according to the 2nd, 3rd,
and 5th chapters of the Politics of Aristotle, the most perceptive commentator on justice, and the wisest interpreter of the other moral virtues, as well as of nature and nature's laws. The wise man in the book of Proverbs approves Aristotle's teaching that the fool ought to be slave to the wise. Philosophers and great theologians alike follow Aristotle as a master. St. Thomas, too, teaches the same thing. And Thomas holds first place among scholastic theologians, always following as he does Aristotle's opinion in the explanation of the natural laws. All political philosophers, basing themselves on this reason alone, teach that in cities, kingdoms, and states, those who excel in virtue and prudence should preside with sovereignty over the government so that the government may be just according to natural law. St. Augustine considers the natural law to be divine inasmuch as it flows from the divine law. This is God's will. The natural order must be observed, and it is forbidden to be overturned. Hence, Augustine often says that if someone is unwilling to do what is good for himself, and he is obliged to act for his own welfare, it is just to force him to do it, even though he is unwilling and resists. This agrees with what Augustine teaches in different parts of the City of God, which St. Thomas cites when he upholds the same opinion that the Romans justly subjugated the other nations of the world. God wanted the greater part of the world to be under the Roman dominion so that it might be ruled more justly under the government of a wise people who cherished justice. But even if these Indians do not lack capacity, with still more reason must they heed and obey the commands of those who can teach them to live like human beings and do the things that are beneficial for both their present and future life. The spread and growth of the Christian religion will be accomplished if once the Indian regions are brought under control, the gospel can be preached safely by consecrated men without danger so that they will not be massacred by pagan priests or rulers, as they have been 3 or 4 times. I support this by the authority of Augustine, who writes, Christ wanted men to be drawn to the Christian church in the first period of the infant church. But once the church grew in powers and numbers, he wanted men to be forced to join the church. Violence is resorted to in order to bring them because, as Augustine says, the following prophecy had not yet been fulfilled. All men will do him homage, all kings become his servants. The more the church realizes this, the more the church uses its power, not only by inviting, but also by compelling unbelievers to the faith. Lest anyone think that the arguments that Augustine uses against heretics do not apply to pagans, let me strengthen the arguments by citing the law of the God-fearing Emperor Constantine against the pagans. Having closed the pagan temples and prohibited shameful auguries, emulations, and sacrifices, Constantine forbade the worship of idols under penalty of death and confiscation of property. The Holy Fathers Ambrose as well as Augustine approved this law as fair and just. Nevertheless, I declare I do not want the unwilling to be baptized against their will. This is against divine law, and no one can oblige anyone to be baptized against their will. However, measures of violence and whatever is probably helpful should be tried so that heretics and pagans will acknowledge their come to their senses and thus ask for baptism of their own accord. And several of these Indians did when moved by violence and force of war. Let me conclude by saying that it is totally just as well as most beneficial that these barbarians be conquered and brought under the control of the Spanish, who are worshippers of Christ. This is the easiest way for them to accept the Christian religion, which experience has clearly taught. This is especially true when this can be accomplished with minimum bloodshed. In fact, every year they used to sacrifice many more men to their pagan gods than will perish when the terrors of war are launched against them, to the immeasurable benefit of both the living and those who come after. Furthermore, the Roman pontiff, Alexander VI, in a decree to the College of Cardinals, declared, armed expeditions against the Indians are just, and that he gave the kings of Castile the right to conquer them and bring them into their empire, and he expressly forbade, for just reasons, other rulers to take up arms against the Indians. Therefore, just as no one can deny that wars undertaken at God's command are just, no one will deny that a war is just, that God's vicar, in the exercise of his pontifical authority and after mature deliberation, declares to be justified. Thank you. Welcome back to the game. We're tied at $500 each. Let's get right down to it. The next quote. No people will abandon the religion of their ancestors except by force of arms or by miracles. Yes, John. Scholar. Yes! Galileo, Sepulveda, Plato, or Copernicus. Sepulveda. Yes, Stella? I protest. Sepulveda was a scholar, but he also falls into the category of state. Yes, Stella, Sepulveda does cross categories. An Aristotelian scholar, he was also the royal historian for the Spanish Empire. You, Stella, win a bonus $250 for correctly identifying the cross-categorical persona. And when you said the word protest, you pronounced the P word and popped up with the secret sound of the day. P. Now, correctly identify a P word that defines Sepulveda's place in history and win another $250. Problem, plan, perceive, plot, prepare, produce, prejudice, heart, parcel, portion, proportion, percentage, profit, hope, project, preach, pacify, pet, parochial, patriarchal, patriotic, police, political, power, president, pristine, pretty, perfect, progress, pursue, persuade, perpetuate, penetrate, pounce, pillage, plunder, penalize, poke, liberate, produce, permanence, pain, ponderous, force, population, creed, prefect, person, personality, people, public, private, perspective. Polemics. Sepulveda was involved in an ongoing controversial debate with Las Casas, also known as the Apostle of the Indians. Very good, Stella. I'm gonna need a transfusion. The excitement is killing me. We got a tie game going again here, folks. John correctly identifying 2 quotes for $1,000. And Stella, what can I say? She crosses categories. She identifies and defines. She's the mother of 2. She's got $1,000 and valuable points towards escape into history on a dream vacation. Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back. Okay?
Pow! I got you, man. You did not. Did 2, did not, did 2, did not, did 2. Pow! There, I got you. You have to count to 50. Do not. Come on. Come on, you're dead. You do 2. Okay. How come I always have to play the Indian? Fine. 1 little, 2 little, 3 little, 4 little, 5 little,
6 Welcome back to the final round of Tell Me What They'd Say. Our next quote. They are not children of God, not even born of this earth, or generated by a man and born of a woman. So fierce an animal must be offspring of the sea. Church? No. Stella? Explorer? Nope, neither. Don Gonzalez, an Indian chief from what is now called Nicaragua, later converted to the Christian creed. We gotta break this tie, folks. Try this one. They should be good servants and of quick intelligence, since I see that they very soon say all that is said to them, and I believe that they would easily be made Christians, for it appeared to me that they had no creed. Our Lord willing, I will bring back 6 of them to your highnesses, that they may learn to talk.
Columbus!
Elijah was a lonely Indian, never went nowhere. His heart was set on the Indian maid with the coal black hair. Elijah just stood there and never let it show, so she could never answer yes or no. And then one day a wealthy customer bought the Indian maid and took her oh so far away, but old Elijah stayed. Elijah just stands there as lonely as can be and wishes he was still an old pine tree. Oh, Elijah, he never got a kiss. Oh, Elijah, he don't know what he missed. Is there any wonder that his face is red? Elijah, that poor old wooden head.